Get in. Let me take you home.
John Mitchell said, pulling his pickup truck to the curb, where an elderly man in an expensive suit stood drenched in pouring rain, briefcase clutched to his chest. The old man looked at the truck skeptically. Rusted edges, faded paint, a working man's vehicle. But the rain was brutal, and the young father's eyes were kind. He got in. What John didn't know was that the soaked stranger he'd just helped was Robert Sterling, billionaire real estate mogul worth $3 billion. And what Robert didn't know was that his simple thank you would become, "You saved my son-in-law's job," within 24 hours, changing both their lives forever. But before the moment that would change everything, there was a different man. If you're enjoying this story, please like this video and subscribe to the channel for more incredible true stories that will touch your heart. John Mitchell was 35 years old, driving a 15-year-old pickup truck through Philadelphia on a Thursday evening, exhausted from 12 hours of hauling freight across 3 states. He was a long-haul truck driver for Morrison Logistics, a mid-sized shipping company that paid decent wages but demanded brutal hours. Tonight, John was running late to pick up his 7-year-old daughter Emma from after-school care, and the rain was making traffic worse. Life hadn't been kind to John Mitchell. 5 years ago, he'd been married to Sarah, working as a warehouse supervisor, building toward management, living in a modest house in the suburbs with their toddler daughter. Then, Sarah got sick. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer that moved too fast for treatment to help. She died 8 months after diagnosis, leaving John a widower at 30 with a 2-year-old daughter and medical debt that consumed every cent of their savings and then some. John lost the house, sold it to pay hospital bills and funeral costs, moved into a cramped 2-bedroom apartment in a neighborhood that wasn't great but wasn't terrible. He couldn't keep the warehouse supervisor job. The hours were 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, and he had no one to watch Emma. His parents were dead. Sarah's parents lived in California and weren't interested in helping, and daycare cost more than John could afford. So John switched to long-haul trucking. The pay was better, and Morrison Logistics offered flexible scheduling that let him arrange routes around Emma's school hours. He'd drive overnight and long weekends when Emma stayed with Mrs. Chen, their neighbor who watched her for reasonable rates. It wasn't ideal. John was always tired, always worried, always calculating whether he could make rent and groceries and Emma's needs. But it worked, barely. Emma was 7 now, smart and resilient, despite growing up with one parent who was gone more than he was home. She had John's dark brown hair and hazel eyes, Sarah's sharp mind and gentle spirit. She understood, in the way children understand when they have no choice, that Daddy had to work a lot to take care of them. She never complained about Mrs. Chen's house or the small apartment or wearing second-hand clothes. She just hugged John tight when he came home and said, "I missed you, Daddy." John lived for those hugs. They were the only thing that made the exhaustion and stress and constant financial anxiety worth it. On this particular Thursday evening, John was driving through Center City, Philadelphia during a thunderstorm, trying to reach Emma's after-school program before the 6 p.m. late pickup fee kicked in. He'd finished a route from Philadelphia to Pittsburgh and back, 12 hours straight, and he was running on coffee and determination. The rain was biblical, sheets of water hammering down, visibility barely 20 feet, wipers working overtime. John was crawling through traffic when he saw the man on the sidewalk. Elderly guy, maybe 70, wearing an expensive-looking dark suit that was completely soaked through. He stood under a bus stop shelter that wasn't providing any protection, rain pouring off the plastic roof directly onto him. He held a leather briefcase above his head uselessly, water streaming down his face. No umbrella, no coat. Just standing there looking lost and miserable. John's first instinct was to keep driving. He was late. Emma was waiting. This wasn't his problem, but something made him stop. Maybe it was remembering his own father, who died of a heart attack at 65. Maybe it was just basic human decency. Maybe it was knowing what it felt like to need help and have people walk past like you didn't exist. John pulled the truck to the curb, rolled down the passenger window, and called out over the rain, "Hey, you need a ride?" The old man turned, squinting through the rain. Up close, John could see he was distinguished-looking despite being drenched. Silver hair plastered to his head, sharp, intelligent blue eyes behind rain-spotted glasses, expensive suit with a designer label visible on the jacket. This was clearly someone important, someone with money. What was he doing standing in the rain like a homeless person? My driver was supposed to meet me," the old man said, his voice cultured and educated. "He hasn't shown up. My phone died. I've been waiting 40 minutes. "Where do you need to go?" John asked. The old man hesitated, clearly uncomfortable accepting help from a stranger in a beat-up truck. "Rittenhouse Square, but I can wait for—" "Get in," John interrupted. "You'll catch pneumonia standing there. I'll take you home." The old man looked at John's face, honest, tired, kind, and made a decision. He opened the passenger door and climbed into the truck, water dripping off him onto the worn upholstery. John cranked the heat. "Thank you," the old man said, settling the briefcase on his lap. "This is very kind of you." "No problem," John said, pulling back into traffic. "I'm John Mitchell, by the way." "Robert," the old man replied, not offering a last name. "Robert Sterling." John didn't recognize the name. He didn't follow business news or society pages. He drove trucks and raised his daughter and didn't have time for anything else. So he had no idea that the soaked stranger sitting in his truck was Robert Sterling, founder and CEO of Sterling Properties, one of the largest commercial real estate empires on the East Coast, worth an estimated $3 billion, ranked among Philadelphia's wealthiest and most powerful men. They drove in comfortable silence for a while, rain hammering on the truck roof. Finally, Robert spoke. "You're very kind to help a stranger. Not many people would stop." John shrugged. "My dad used to say that helping people costs you nothing but means everything to them. Seemed wrong to leave you standing in the rain." "Your father sounds like a wise man." "He was," John said quietly. "Died 5 years ago. Heart attack." "I'm sorry." They fell silent again. Robert studied John, the worn clothes, the tired eyes, the calloused hands on the steering wheel. "What do you do, John?" "Long-haul truck driver, Morrison Logistics, just finished a Pittsburgh route." "That's hard work." "It pays the bills," John said. "I've got a daughter to take care of. Emma, she's 7. Actually, I'm running late to pick her up right now, so I'm going to drop you off and then book it across town." "You have my sincere apologies for the delay," Robert said. "I'm very grateful, but I don't want to cause you problems." "You're not causing problems," John assured him. "It's a 10-minute detour. Emma will forgive me." Robert directed John to a luxury high-rise building in Rittenhouse Square, one of Philadelphia's most exclusive neighborhoods. The doorman actually came out with an umbrella when he saw Robert approaching, his face showing shocked relief. "Mr. Sterling, we've been trying to reach you. Your driver called. There was an accident. He's at the hospital." "I'm fine, Thomas," Robert said, waving off the concern. "This gentleman gave me a ride." He turned to John. "Thank you again. Truly. I won't forget this kindness." "Any time," John said. "Get warm and dry." Robert hesitated, then pulled out his wallet. "Please, let me—" "No," John said firmly. "I didn't help you for money. I helped you because it was the right thing to do. Take care of yourself, Robert." Before Robert could argue, John drove off into the rain, already thinking about Emma waiting at after-school care. Robert Sterling stood under the doorman's umbrella, watching the old truck disappear into traffic, holding a $20 bill he'd been trying to offer. He stood there long enough that Thomas asked, "Sir, are you all right?" "That man," Robert said slowly, "just reminded me of something I'd forgotten." "What's that, sir?" "That character isn't measured by wealth. It's measured by choices." The next morning, John woke up to 3 missed calls from his supervisor at Morrison Logistics. Never a good sign. He called back with growing dread. "John, we need to talk," his supervisor Marcus said. "Come to the office at 10 a.m. Don't be late." John's stomach dropped. In his experience, "we need to talk" meant, "you're being fired." He dropped Emma at school, spent the drive to Morrison Logistics trying to figure out what he'd done wrong, and arrived at the office with his heart pounding. Marcus met him in the conference room with someone from HR, definitely getting fired. "John, we've had a complaint filed against you," Marcus said without preamble. "Last week's delivery to the Greenfield Distribution Center. They're claiming you damaged property during unloading. Their security footage shows your truck hitting a loading dock column. Repair cost is $8,200. They're demanding Morrison pay for damages and threatening to drop our contract if we don't address the situation." John's mind raced. Greenfield Distribution Center. Last week. He remembered that delivery. Tight loading dock. Tricky backing maneuver, but he'd been careful. He hadn't hit anything. "I didn't hit that column," John said. "I was careful. I checked for damage before I left. There wasn't any." "Their footage tells a different story," the HR rep said, sliding a tablet across the table. "This is what they sent us." John watched the grainy security video. It showed his truck backing toward the loading dock, then a brief moment where the truck's corner appeared to contact the column. The angle made it hard to tell definitively, but it looked bad. "That's not—" "I didn't feel any impact," John protested. "If I'd hit something that hard, I would have felt it." "Greenfield is one of our biggest clients," Marcus said. 30% of our revenue. They're threatening to terminate the contract if we don't fire the driver responsible and pay for damages. "I'm sorry, John. I know you're a good driver, but I can't risk losing Greenfield." "So you're firing me?" John asked, his voice hollow. "Effective immediately. You'll receive your final paycheck and accrued PTO. We're not contesting unemployment given the circumstances." John sat there feeling like the floor had dropped out from under him. No job, no income, rent due in 2 weeks. Emma needing new shoes, winter coat, school supplies. How was he supposed to— His phone buzzed. Unknown number. John normally wouldn't answer, but he was too shocked to think clearly. "Hello? Mr. Mitchell? This is Thomas Reeves, assistant to Robert Sterling. Mr. Sterling would like to speak with you. Can you come to his office this afternoon? 2 p.m.? John blinked. Robert Sterling. The old man from last night. Why would he want to talk to John? Sure? I can be there." John had nothing but time now. "Excellent. Sterling Properties, 42nd floor. Security will be expecting you." The call ended. Marcus was staring at John. "Did someone just offer you a job?" "I don't know," John said honestly, "but I guess I'll find out." At 2 p.m., John walked into Sterling Properties headquarters in Center City, Philadelphia, feeling profoundly out of place. The lobby was all marble and glass and expensive art, filled with people in designer suits moving purposefully. John wore clean jeans and a button-down shirt, his nicest clothes, and still felt like everyone could tell he didn't belong. Security directed him to the 42nd floor. The elevator was nicer than John's apartment. When the doors opened, a professional-looking man in his 40s greeted him. "Mr. Mitchell, I'm Thomas Reeves, Mr. Sterling's assistant. Please follow me." They walked through an office space that screamed wealth and power, floor-to-ceiling windows with city views, modern furniture, employees moving with quiet efficiency. Thomas led John to a massive corner office where Robert Sterling sat behind a desk that probably cost more than John's truck. Robert stood when John entered, extending his hand. "John, thank you for coming. Please, sit." John shook his hand and sat in the leather chair across from the desk, completely confused. "Mr. Sterling, I appreciate you reaching out, but I'm not sure why I'm here." "Call me Robert," the older man said. "I asked you here because I wanted to thank you properly for last night, and because I have a proposition for you." "A proposition?" Robert leaned back in his chair, studying John with those sharp blue eyes. "After you dropped me off last night, I did some thinking. You helped a stranger without expecting anything in return. You refused payment. You demonstrated character and kindness that's rare these days, so I had Thomas do some research on you." John's stomach tightened. "Research? Nothing invasive," Robert assured him. "Just public information. I learned you're a widower raising a daughter alone, working hard at an honest job, dealing with medical debt from your wife's illness, living paycheck to paycheck but never complaining. The kind of man who stops to help strangers in rainstorms despite being late to pick up his daughter. I don't understand what this has to do with—" "This morning I learned something else," Robert interrupted. "I learned that Morrison Logistics fired you for a supposed accident at the Greenfield Distribution Center." John's eyes widened. "How did you know about that?" "Because I own Greenfield," Robert said simply. "Sterling Properties owns the building and leases it to the distribution company. They reported the damage to my property management team this morning. When I saw the name John Mitchell on the incident report, I had my team review the security footage myself." Robert turned his computer monitor toward John, showing the same security video John had seen earlier. "This footage is misleading. The angle makes it look like your truck hit the column. But watch this." He clicked to a different camera angle. "This view shows the actual contact. A different truck, one from Franklin Shipping, hit that column the day before your delivery. Greenfield is trying to blame you to avoid paying their own insurance deductible." John stared at the screen, relief and anger flooding through him. "They lied. They got me fired for something I didn't do." "Yes," Robert said. "And I've already called Morrison Logistics to inform them of the truth. They're offering you your job back with an apology and back pay for today." "You did that? Why?" Robert leaned forward. "Because you helped me when I needed it. Because you showed me kindness without knowing who I was or what I could do for you. And because I believe in repaying debts." John felt tears building behind his eyes. The job was back. Emma would have food and a roof and shoes. They'd be okay. "Thank you," John said, his voice breaking. "I don't know how to thank you enough." "Actually," Robert said, "I have a better idea than you returning to Morrison Logistics. I want to offer you a position with Sterling Properties, Director of Operations for our logistics division. We handle shipping and freight for all our commercial properties. It's a management position. Daytime hours, Monday through Friday, full benefits, salary of $95,000 annually." John's brain couldn't process what he was hearing. $95,000, benefits, normal hours, the ability to actually be present for Emma. "Why would you offer me this?" John asked. "I'm a truck driver. I don't have management experience beyond a warehouse supervisor position I left 5 years ago." "You have something more valuable than experience," Robert said. "You have character. You make good decisions under pressure. You help people without expecting reward. Those are qualities I can't teach but desperately need in my organization. The technical skills of management, I can train you in those. But integrity, that's either there or it isn't, and you have it." John thought about Emma, about being able to pick her up from school every day, about health insurance and retirement savings and maybe someday buying a house again, about not being exhausted and stressed every moment of every day. "I don't know what to say," John admitted. "Say yes," Robert replied. "Say you'll take the job and let me repay the kindness you showed a stranger in the rain." John extended his hand. "Yes, absolutely yes." Robert shook it firmly. Welcome to Sterling Properties, John. I think this is the beginning of something good. Over the next 6 months, John Mitchell's life transformed in ways he couldn't have imagined. The position at Sterling Properties was challenging but rewarding. He oversaw logistics operations for 15 commercial properties, managed a team of 20 people, coordinated with shipping companies and vendors. Robert had been right that John could learn the technical aspects. His years of trucking had given him deep understanding of freight and shipping, and his natural leadership skills emerged quickly. But the real changes were personal. John moved into a better apartment in a safe neighborhood with good schools. He bought Emma new clothes and toys without having to check his bank account first. He was home for dinner every night, helped with homework, attended school events. For the first time in 5 years, he wasn't drowning in stress and exhaustion. Robert Sterling took a personal interest in John's success. They had lunch occasionally, Robert offering mentorship and advice, sharing his own story of building Sterling Properties from a single office building into a commercial real estate empire. John learned that Robert's driver who'd abandoned him in the rain had been fired for drinking on the job. The accident he'd caused while intoxicated had hospitalized him and convinced Robert to finally address the problem he'd been ignoring. If he'd shown up that night, Robert mused over lunch one day, I never would have met you. Sometimes the worst moments lead to the best outcomes. Through these lunches, John learned about Robert's family. He had one child, a daughter named Alison, who was 32, brilliant, independent, and currently running the company's development division. Robert spoke of her with obvious pride and slight frustration. She's more talented than I was at her age, Robert said, but she won't accept that she's earned her position. She thinks everyone sees her as the boss's daughter who got handed everything. I keep trying to convince her to take over as CEO when I retire, but she refuses. Says she needs to prove herself first. John met Alison Sterling 3 months into his new position during a company-wide meeting about a major development project. She walked into the conference room wearing a tailored business suit, carrying herself with quiet confidence that made people pay attention. She was beautiful in an understated way. Dark brown hair pulled into a professional bun, intelligent green eyes, features that suggested both her father's strength and a softer gentleness underneath. She presented the development plan with clear expertise, answering technical questions with confidence, demonstrating comprehensive knowledge of zoning laws and construction processes. John watched her navigate pushback from older male executives with grace and firm competence, never backing down, but never escalating unnecessarily. After the meeting, Robert introduced them. Alison, this is John Mitchell, our new Director of Operations. John, my daughter Alison, VP of Development. Alison extended her hand professionally. Mr. Mitchell, I've heard good things about your work in logistics. Thank you, John said, shaking her hand. And please call me John. Your presentation was impressive. That's a complex project. Complicated but manageable, Alison replied. Though coordinating logistics for construction will be challenging, I may need to consult with your team. Any time, John offered. We're here to help. Their first professional interaction was courteous and brief. John returned to his office and didn't think much about it beyond noting that Robert's daughter was clearly as capable as he'd claimed. Over the following weeks, Alison did consult with John's team about logistics for the development project. She'd stop by his office with questions about material delivery schedules or freight coordination, always professional, always prepared. John found himself looking forward to these consultations. Alison was sharp and listened carefully to feedback, incorporating operational concerns into her planning in ways that showed respect for his expertise. One afternoon, Alison arrived at John's office looking frustrated, holding a tablet showing shipping manifests. John, I need your honest opinion about something. The contractors are blaming shipping delays for construction falling behind schedule. Are these legitimate delays, or are they making excuses? John reviewed the manifests, cross-referencing with his team's records. These are excuses. We've delivered everything on schedule. See these timestamps? Every delivery arrived within the scheduled window. If construction is behind, it's not because of shipping. Allison's jaw tightened. I thought so. They're trying to shift blame for their own mismanagement. Want me to attend your next contractor meeting? John offered. I can walk them through the delivery records, make it clear that shipping isn't the problem. Would you? That would be incredibly helpful. At the contractor meeting 2 days later, John presented the delivery data methodically, dismantling the contractor's excuses with documentation they couldn't refute. Allison handled the confrontation that followed with professional firmness, ultimately putting the project back on track. Afterward, in the parking garage, Allison caught up with John. Thank you for that. Having you there made the difference. Just doing my job, John said. No, you went beyond your job, Allison corrected. You could have just sent the data. You chose to show up and support a colleague. I appreciate that. John noticed for the first time that Allison looked tired beneath her professional composure. Are you okay? You seem stressed. Allison hesitated, then admitted, This project is my test case. I'm trying to prove I can manage major developments without my father's help. If it fails, everyone will say I couldn't handle it. If it succeeds, they'll say my father fixed it behind the scenes. I can't win. For what it's worth, John said carefully, I've watched you work. You're extremely capable. Anyone who thinks you're just riding your father's name isn't paying attention. Allison looked at him with surprise, then something warmer. Thank you. That actually means a lot coming from someone who hasn't known me since birth. They talked for another 20 minutes in the parking garage about the pressure of family expectations, about proving yourself, about the loneliness of always being judged by circumstances you didn't choose. John found himself opening up about Sarah's death in ways he hadn't with anyone else. He told Allison about the final 8 months, watching the woman he loved fade away while trying to keep a toddler's world stable and normal. About the guilt of feeling relieved when it was over, not because he wanted Sarah gone, but because he couldn't bear watching her suffer anymore. About the nights he still woke up reaching for someone who wasn't there. Allison shared her own struggles with vulnerability that surprised him. She talked about growing up as Robert Sterling's only child after her mother died when Allison was 8, about boarding schools and nannies, and a father who loved her but showed it through providing material things because emotional connection terrified him after losing his wife. About realizing in college that every friendship came with ulterior motives. People wanted access to the Sterling wealth and connections, not Allison herself. I had a best friend freshman year, Allison said quietly. Sophie. We were roommates, stayed up talking all night, told each other everything. I thought finally, someone who saw me for me. Then junior year I found out she'd been feeding information to a tabloid journalist she was dating. Every private thing I'd told her, my struggles with my father, my insecurities, everything, she sold for money and social media followers. The betrayal destroyed me. That's terrible, John said with genuine sympathy. It taught me not to trust easily, Allison continued. After that I kept everyone at distance. Professional, polite, never personal. Safer that way, but also lonelier. I have colleagues and acquaintances and people who want things from me. I don't have friends, not real ones. John understood that loneliness intimately. I get it. After Sarah died, people were kind at first, brought casseroles, offered condolences, said if I needed anything to call. But after a few months, they moved on with their lives, and I was left alone, trying to figure out how to be both parents to Emma while managing my own grief. People stopped calling, stopped inviting me to things because I was the sad widower who brought down the mood. Eventually, I stopped trying to maintain friendships because I was too tired and they didn't really want me around anyway." "That must have been incredibly isolating," Allison said. "It was. Still is sometimes. Emma is amazing and I love being her father, but she's 7. She can't be my emotional support, so I just carry it alone." John smiled sadly. "Listen to us. 2 successful professional adults having a parking garage therapy session." "Maybe we needed it," Allison suggested. "Maybe it's nice to talk to someone who understands being lonely in a crowd." "Yeah," John agreed. "It really is." When they finally parted, John drove home thinking that Allison Sterling was nothing like he'd expected. She wasn't spoiled or entitled. She was lonely and driven and carrying weight she wouldn't let anyone help her bear. She was like him, surviving, functioning, looking successful on the outside while struggling privately with isolation and loss. And he found himself wanting to know her better, wanting to be someone she could trust, wanting to prove that not everyone wanted something from her. Over the next few months, John and Allison's professional relationship quietly shifted into something more personal. It started with coffee breaks that turned into long conversations about work and life and everything else. Allison would stop by John's office at the end of the day just to decompress, talking through problems without expectation that John would fix them, just appreciating someone who listened without agenda. John found himself thinking about her more than he should. The way she bit her lip when concentrating, the genuine laugh that emerged when she forgot to be professional, the fierce intelligence that lit her eyes when she was solving problems, the vulnerability she showed only in private moments, but he kept his feelings strictly to himself. Allison was his boss's daughter, a billionaire heiress, completely out of his league. He was a truck driver turned operations manager with a 7-year-old daughter and medical debt. The class difference was enormous. Even thinking about pursuing her felt presumptuous. The shift happened 6 months after they met at the company holiday party. Sterling Properties hosted an elaborate event at a luxury hotel, open bar, catered dinner, live music, everyone dressed formally. John attended because it was expected, wearing the one suit he owned, feeling out of place among executives in designer clothing. He spent most of the evening at a table with his operations team, making polite conversation and counting down until he could leave. Then Allison appeared beside him. "John, can I steal you for a minute?" She led him out onto the hotel terrace, away from the party noise. The December air was cold, the city lights spread out below them. Allison stood at the railing, looking exhausted despite her elegant black dress and perfect makeup. "Are you okay?" John asked. "My ex-boyfriend is inside," Allison said quietly. "Preston Carmichael. He works in finance. We dated for 2 years. He proposed last year, and I said no because I realized he wanted the Sterling name more than he wanted me. He took a job at Sterling Properties 3 months ago specifically to get close to me again. My father hired him without asking me first." "That's incredibly uncomfortable," John said. "He cornered me by the bar just now, told me I made a mistake rejecting him, that I'll end up alone because no one will ever want me for me. They'll only want the money. That I should stop pretending I'm too good for him and accept reality." John's hands clenched. "He said that to you. He's not wrong, though, is he?" Allison's voice broke slightly. "Every relationship I've had has ended the same way. They want the money or the connections or the status. None of them wanted Allison, just the Sterling heiress." John stepped closer, his voice gentle but firm. "He is wrong, completely wrong. You're brilliant and kind and strong. Anyone who can't see that past your family name is an idiot who doesn't deserve you." Allison turned to face him, tears threatening despite her composed expression. "Do you really think that? Or are you just being kind because my father is your boss?" "I think," John said carefully, that you're the most impressive person I've met in years. I think you work harder than anyone I know to prove yourself, despite not needing to prove anything. I think you're carrying weight you shouldn't have to carry alone. And I think any man lucky enough to earn your trust should spend every day grateful for it, not trying to use it for status. Allison stared at him, something shifting in her eyes. John, can I ask you something honest? Always. Why are you nice to me? I know my father helped you, and you're loyal to him. But when we talk, when you support my projects, when you listen to me complain, that's not about my father, is it? John knew he should lie, should protect himself, should maintain professional distance. But Allison's eyes were too honest, too hopeful, too tired of people being dishonest. No, he admitted quietly, it's not about your father. It's because I think you're remarkable, because I enjoy your company, because talking to you is the best part of my workday. And because I think you deserve to have at least one person in your life who sees you, not your last name. Allison closed the distance between them, her voice barely a whisper. John, I need to know something. If I wasn't Robert Sterling's daughter, if I was just Allison who works in development, could you see me as more than a colleague? John's heart pounded. This was the moment. The choice that could change everything or ruin everything. Yes, he said. Absolutely yes. But Allison, I'm a single father with a second-grade daughter and medical debt and a decade-old truck. You're a billionaire heiress who could have anyone. The gap between our worlds is... I don't care about the gap, Allison interrupted. I care that you're genuine, that you showed up to defend my project without asking what was in it for you, that you listen when I talk instead of just waiting to speak, that you've been kind to me for 6 months without expecting anything in return. John, do you have any idea how rare that is? Allison, I like you, she said firmly. I've liked you since that contractor meeting when you backed me up without hesitation. I've been trying to convince myself it's just gratitude or loneliness, but it's not. It's you. And I need to know if there's any possibility you might feel the same. John looked at her, brilliant, vulnerable, hopeful, and made a choice. I've been half in love with you for 3 months, he admitted. I just didn't think I had the right to say it. Allison smiled, genuine and beautiful. You have every right, and I'd very much like to kiss you now if that's okay. That's extremely okay, John managed. And then Allison was kissing him, her hands in his hair, his arms around her waist, 6 months of tension and longing crystallizing into this perfect moment on a hotel terrace under December stars. When they finally pulled apart, both breathless, Allison laughed softly. This is probably wildly unprofessional. Extremely unprofessional, John agreed. We should probably discuss workplace relationship policies. Tomorrow, Allison said. Right now I just want to stand here with you and pretend the rest of the world doesn't exist. So they did, holding each other on the terrace while the party continued inside, 2 people from completely different worlds discovering they fit together perfectly. Dating Allison Sterling was nothing like John expected, and everything he didn't know he needed. They kept it quiet initially, not secret, but private, figuring out what they were to each other before letting the world weigh in with opinions. Allison was surprisingly low-key outside the office. She preferred quiet dinners at John's apartment over expensive restaurants, movie nights on the couch over theater premieres, helping Emma with homework over attending society galas. The first time she showed up at John's modest apartment in jeans and a sweater carrying takeout pizza, John had stared. What? Allison asked, slightly self-conscious. Nothing. I just expected... I don't know what I expected. Not pizza and casual clothes. Allison laughed. John, I spent my entire childhood at formal dinners and charity events, wearing uncomfortable dresses and making small talk with people I didn't like. When I'm not working, I just want to be normal. "Is that okay?" "More than okay," John assured her. She was wonderful with Emma, treating the 7-year-old with genuine respect and interest, asking about school and friends and favourite books without the condescension adults often used with children. The first time Alison visited, Emma had been shy and suspicious, another woman showing up in her daddy's life, potentially trying to replace her mom. But Alison handled it perfectly. She didn't try to force friendship or affection. She just sat on the floor with Emma and asked what she was building with her blocks. Emma, surprised to have an adult actually interested in her block city, had explained the elaborate layout in detail. Alison listened attentively, asked thoughtful questions, and even offered a few architectural suggestions that Emma incorporated. By the end of that first evening, Emma was showing Alison her favourite books, explaining her science project, demonstrating her cartwheel technique. When it was time for Alison to leave, Emma hugged her spontaneously. "You can come back," Emma announced with 7-year-old authority. "I like you." After Emma went to bed, John called Alison. "Thank you for tonight, for being so good with her." "She's amazing," Alison said warmly. "Smart, creative, confident. You've done an incredible job raising her." "It's been mostly winging it and hoping I don't screw up too badly." "Well, you're clearly doing something right. She's wonderful, John, and she clearly adores you." Over the next few weeks, Alison became a regular presence in their lives. She'd come over for dinner, help Emma with math homework. John struggled with the new teaching methods, play board games, watch movies. She never tried to parent Emma or replace Sarah. She was just Alison, someone who cared about both of them and wanted to be part of their lives. Emma adored her increasingly. "She's really nice, Daddy," Emma confided one evening after Alison left. "And she's pretty, and she's smart, and she laughs at my jokes even when they're not that funny. Are you gonna marry her?" "Slow down, sweet pea," John laughed, his heart full. "We're just dating." "Okay, but when you do marry her, can I be flower girl? Because I'd be really good at it. I've been practicing walking slow and looking elegant." "Have you now?" Emma demonstrated, walking across the living room with exaggerated slowness and dignity, then grinning. "See? I'm totally ready." John just hugged his daughter, marveling at her acceptance and resilience and big heart. "You're the best kid in the whole world, you know that?" "I know," Emma said matter-of-factly, "but you're still the best dad, even if your jokes are worse than mine." Meanwhile, Alison was experiencing a transformation of her own. For the first time in her adult life, she had a relationship based on genuine connection rather than social expectation or financial interest. John didn't care about her money or her family name. He cared about her thoughts and feelings and whether she'd had a good day. He asked about her projects not to network, but because he genuinely wanted to know. He supported her professionally, not for advancement, but because he believed in her capabilities. It was terrifying and wonderful in equal measure. Alison found herself lowering the walls she'd built, trusting John with vulnerabilities she'd never shared with anyone. She told him about the eating disorder she'd struggled with in college, triggered by pressure to be perfect, about the panic attacks she still sometimes had before major presentations, about her fear that she'd never be good enough, no matter how hard she worked. John listened without judgment, held her when she cried, offered comfort without trying to fix everything. He shared his own struggles in return, the depression he'd battled after Sarah's death, the guilt he still carried about not being able to save her, the fear that Emma would resent him someday for not giving her the stable two-parent home she deserved. They healed each other in small ways, day by day, proving that vulnerability wasn't weakness and trust wasn't foolishness. Not always. Not with the right person. John just hugged his daughter, marveling at her acceptance and hoping he didn't mess this up. The challenges emerged when their relationship became public knowledge. Company gossip started immediately. The boss's daughter dating the operations director, questions about favoritism and advancement, speculation that John was using Allison to climb the corporate ladder. John heard the whispers, saw the skeptical looks, felt the changed dynamics when colleagues wondered if he had power beyond his title. Allison faced worse. Her ex Preston spread rumors that John was a gold digger, a truck driver who'd seduced the heiress for her money. Society acquaintances questioned what she saw in someone so far beneath her social class. Even some family friends suggested John was using her. The breaking point came at a Sterling Properties board meeting 4 months into their relationship. John wasn't present, but Allison told him about it afterward, with tears of fury in her eyes. "Preston made a presentation about operational efficiency," she said, pacing John's living room. "He spent 15 minutes implying that your department's recent success was due to my favoritism rather than your actual competence. He suggested that our relationship represented a conflict of interest and that maybe your position should be re-evaluated to ensure merit-based promotion practices." John felt sick. What did the board say? Half of them nodded along, half looked uncomfortable but didn't argue. "My father shut it down hard, but the damage was done. They're questioning your qualifications because of me. Maybe we should—" "Don't," Allison interrupted. "Don't you dare suggest we break up to protect your career. I won't let Preston win. I won't let their prejudice dictate my life. But if being with me costs you credibility, being with you gives me happiness," Allison shouted, then lowered her voice. "John, I've spent my whole life letting other people's opinions control my choices, letting fear of judgment stop me from taking risks. I'm done with that. I love you, and I don't care what Preston or the board or society thinks about it." John's heart stopped. "You love me." Allison's anger melted into vulnerability. "Yes, I love you. I love your kindness and your integrity, and the way you put Emma first in every decision. I love that you still drive your beat-up truck, even though you can afford better because it works fine, and Emma likes it. I love that you helped my father in the rain without knowing who he was. I love you, John Mitchell, and I need you to tell me that's okay." John pulled her into his arms. "It's more than okay. I love you too, and we'll figure out the rest together." The solution came from an unexpected source, Robert Sterling himself. He called John into his office a week later, his expression serious. "John, I want to talk about you and Allison." John's stomach dropped. "Sir, I know there are concerns about conflict of interest. I want to offer you a position at Morrison Logistics," Robert interrupted. John blinked. "What?" "I've acquired Morrison Logistics," Robert said calmly. "Purchased the entire company last week. I'm installing new leadership and restructuring operations. I want you to be the CEO." "I don't understand. Why would you—" "Because I'm removing the conflict of interest," Robert explained. "If you're CEO of Morrison Logistics, you're not Sterling Properties employee dating the boss's daughter. You're the head of a partner company in a relationship with a Sterling executive. Different dynamic, no reporting relationship, no appearance of impropriety. You bought an entire company to make it okay for me to date your daughter. I bought a company that needed better leadership and happened to solve a problem at the same time," Robert corrected. "Morrison was mismanaged and undervalued. They've been struggling since the previous CEO retired 2 years ago. The interim leadership has made poor strategic decisions, losing major clients and failing to modernize operations. It's a good investment opportunity. I can acquire it below market value and turn it around. The fact that it also allows you and Allison to build your relationship without corporate complications is a bonus." "But CEO—" "Robert, I've only been in management for 6 months. I don't have the experience to run an entire company." Robert leaned back in his chair, studying John with those sharp, assessing eyes. You have something more important than experience. You understand logistics from the ground up because you've driven trucks yourself. You know what drivers need because you've been one. You know how freight operations actually work in practice, not just theory. And you've proven over the past 6 months that you can lead teams, make strategic decisions, and earn respect through competence rather than authority. That's very different from running a CEO, John protested. Not as different as you think, Robert countered. CEO isn't about knowing every technical detail. It's about vision, decision-making, and hiring good people to handle what you don't know. You've demonstrated all three. You identified inefficiencies in our logistics operations and fixed them. You built relationships with our shipping partners that improved service and reduced costs. You created a team culture where people actually want to work. Those are CEO skills, John. What if I fail? What if I can't handle it and Morrison goes under? Then we'll deal with it, Robert said simply. But I don't think you will. I've built a $3 billion empire by being very good at assessing people. You're capable of this, John. You just need to believe it yourself. John thought about Emma, about the stability this opportunity would provide, about Allison and building a future together without the shadow of corporate politics, about proving to himself, not Preston or society or anyone else, that he could rise to this challenge. What would the terms be? Robert slid a folder across the desk. Salary $150,000 annually plus performance bonuses, full benefits for you and Emma, company car, equity stake that increases based on performance milestones. You'd report to a board that includes me, but you'd have operational autonomy to run the company as you see fit. We'd expect profitability within 18 months and growth targets over 3 years. Beyond that, it's your company to lead. John opened the folder, reading through the contract details. Everything Robert described was there, generous but not charity, real expectations with real accountability. This wasn't a fake job to solve a romance problem. This was Robert gambling on John's potential and expecting results. I don't know what to say. Say you'll take the position. Say you'll work your ass off to prove I made the right choice. Say you'll treat my daughter well. Say you'll build a good life together. Robert's voice softened. John, I haven't seen Allison this happy in years. She talks about you and Emma with genuine joy. She's stopped trying to prove herself to people who don't matter and started building something real. That's worth more to me than any corporate policy concerns. John felt tears building. Thank you for everything, for the job, for supporting us, for... You helped me when I needed it, Robert said simply. I'm just returning the favor. Now go tell my daughter the good news. John stood, then hesitated. Robert, can I ask you something personal? Of course. Why did you really stop that night in the rain? You could have called a car service, waited inside somewhere, found a dozen other solutions. Why get in a stranger's truck? Robert was quiet for a moment. Because I was exhausted and soaked and miserable. Because my driver had abandoned me, and my phone was dead, and I felt very old and very alone. And because a kind man offered help without knowing who I was or what he'd get from it. In that moment I wasn't a billionaire. I was just someone who needed assistance. You treated me with dignity and kindness. That's rare, John. That's worth repaying. You've already repaid it 1,000 times over. No, Robert said. I've invested in a good man who will lead my company and love my daughter and teach my future grandchildren about character. That's not repayment. That's good business. John laughed through the tears. You're a hell of a negotiator. I'm a father who wants his daughter happy, Robert replied. Now go. She's waiting for you to call. John and Alison got married a year later in a ceremony that split the difference between their worlds. Elegant but not ostentatious, personal but not tiny. Emma was indeed Flower Girl, taking her duties very seriously and stealing the show with her gap-toothed smile and careful attention to spreading rose petals evenly. Robert walked Alison down the aisle with tears in his eyes, entrusting his daughter to the man who'd stopped to help a stranger in the rain. John's vows were simple. You saw worth in me when I couldn't see it in myself. You chose me when you could have chosen anyone. I promised to spend every day proving that choice was right. Alison's vows were equally straightforward. You helped my father without knowing who he was. You showed me what it means to be genuine. You loved me before you knew my last name mattered. I promise to build a life with you where what we create together matters more than what we inherited separately. They merged their lives carefully and lovingly. Alison moved into a house they bought together, not a mansion, not John's cramped apartment, but a real family home in a good neighborhood with a yard for Emma and space for all of them. They chose it together, Emma included in every decision because she was part of this new family they were building. Alison became Emma's stepmother, not by forcing the role but by earning it through patience and genuine care. She attended Emma's school plays and science fairs. She helped with homework and listened to preteen dramas with genuine interest. She respected Sarah's memory, keeping photos displayed and never trying to replace Emma's mother, just adding a new kind of love to Emma's life. Morrison Logistics thrived under John's leadership in ways that surprised even Robert. John's first major decision was revolutionizing driver compensation and working conditions. He'd lived the grinding reality of long-haul trucking and knew exactly what needed fixing. He implemented better pay scales, improved scheduling that gave drivers actual work-life balance, invested in newer trucks with better safety features and comfort. The changes cost money initially, but driver retention soared and recruitment became easy as word spread that Morrison treated employees like humans instead of replaceable parts. Within the first year, John secured 3 major contracts that previous leadership had lost, rebuilt relationships with clients who'd abandoned Morrison during its decline, and brought the company back to profitability ahead of Robert's 18-month timeline. By year 3, Morrison's revenue had increased 40%, and the company was recognized industry-wide for both financial success and ethical labor practices. John built a culture where truck drivers and warehouse workers and logistics coordinators all felt valued. He remembered what it felt like to be invisible, to be the working-class guy nobody noticed. He made sure every employee at Morrison knew they mattered, from the newest hire to senior management. Alison continued proving herself at Sterling Properties with equal determination. She completed the development project that had been her test case, delivering it on time and under budget despite the contractor issues. She took on increasingly complex projects, eventually overseeing Sterling's expansion into sustainable commercial real estate, an initiative that combined environmental responsibility with smart business strategy. When Robert announced his retirement at 75, the board unanimously voted for Alison as his successor. She'd earned the CEO position not through family connection, but through a decade of results that nobody could deny. On her first day as CEO, she hung a photo in her office. Herself, John, Emma, and Henry standing with Robert, all smiling, the family they'd built from a rainstorm and a choice to be kind. 5 years after their wedding, John and Alison stood on their porch watching Emma, now 12, play in the yard with her younger brother Henry, who had Alison's green eyes and John's dark hair. "Do you ever think about that night?" Alison asked. "The rainstorm when you helped my father?" "All the time," John admitted. "I almost didn't stop. I was late picking up Emma. It would have been easier to keep driving." "I'm glad you didn't." "Me too." John pulled her close. "Your father said something to me once. He said the worst moments lead to the best outcomes. His driver abandoning him, that awful rainstorm, all the things that went wrong, they led to us. To this, Alison agreed, gesturing at their home, their children, their life built together. It's funny how one small choice can change everything. It wasn't small, John said. Helping someone who needs it is never small. It's the most important choice we make. Alison kissed him softly. Wise man. No wonder I married you. Inside the house, the phone rang. Robert calling for his daily check-in with his grandchildren. Emma ran inside shrieking, "Grandpa!" with Henry toddling after her. John and Alison followed, stepping into the warmth of the home they'd built from kindness and choice, and the willingness to see beyond circumstances to character. Years later, when people asked John about his success, CEO of Morrison Logistics, husband to Alison Sterling, stepfather turned father to Emma and father to Henry, respected businessman and philanthropist, he'd always tell the same story, about a rainy Thursday evening when he stopped to help a stranger, about choosing kindness over convenience, about how that simple choice changed everything. Life is just a series of moments, John would say, moments where you choose to help or walk past, choose to judge or understand, choose easy or right. I chose right once on a rainy street, and it brought me here. That's not luck. That's what happens when you remember that every person matters, regardless of who they are or what they can do for you. Robert Sterling, in his retirement, would add his own perspective. I've built buildings and made billions and accomplished things most people only dream of. But the best investment I ever made was accepting a ride from a stranger in a beat-up truck. John didn't know who I was or what I could do for him. He just knew I needed help. That's character you can't buy and wisdom you can't teach. And that's what I wanted for my daughter. Not someone who wanted the Sterling name, but someone who'd help an old man in the rain. John gave me my son-in-law, my grandchildren, and a reminder of what really matters. Not a bad return on getting wet. Emma, grown into a young woman herself, would laugh at her father and grandfather telling these stories at family dinners. But she'd also add her own chapter. I was 7 when Dad helped Grandpa Robert. I remember being annoyed that he was late picking me up. But Dad was always like that, always stopping to help people, always choosing kindness even when it was inconvenient. He taught me that who you are isn't about what you own or achieve. It's about how you treat people when no one's watching and there's nothing in it for you. Dad helped a stranger in the rain, and that stranger changed our lives. But honestly, Dad would have helped anyway. That's just who he is. John Mitchell never forgot what it felt like to be drowning financially, alone, exhausted. Even as CEO of Morrison Logistics and husband to a billionaire heiress, he remembered the cramped apartment and the medical debt and the fear that he couldn't provide for Emma. That memory kept him humble and kind. He paid for his employees' education. He funded programs for single parents struggling with childcare. He stopped to help strangers when he saw them in need, because he remembered what it felt like to need help and have someone notice. And sometimes, driving through Philadelphia on rainy evenings, John would pass a bus stop where someone stood waiting in the downpour, and he'd pull over, roll down the window and ask, "Need a ride?" Because that's who John Mitchell was. Not because of what he'd gained from one act of kindness, but because helping people was never about what you got back. It was about seeing another human being and choosing to care. 20 years after helping a stranger in the rain, John Mitchell had built a life beyond his wildest dreams. Successful career, loving marriage, beautiful children, financial security, respect and purpose and genuine happiness. But when people asked what he was most proud of, John never mentioned the business success or the wealth or the accomplishments. He'd talk about Emma's kindness and Henry's generosity, about Alison's brilliant leadership and compassionate heart, about the scholarship fund they'd created for children who lost parents, about the employees whose lives improved under his leadership. Success, John would say, isn't measured by what you accumulate. It's measured by who you help and how you treat people and whether you make the world slightly better than you found it. I stopped for a stranger in the rain. That stranger gave me opportunities I never could have earned otherwise. But the real gift wasn't the job or the money. It was remembering that every person you meet is fighting battles you can't see. And sometimes the smallest act of kindness changes everything. Robert Sterling, at 90 years old and surrounded by grandchildren and great-grandchildren, would smile at his son-in-law's wisdom. I was a stranger in the rain, he'd reflect, a billionaire reduced to standing wet and lost on a street corner. And the man who helped me wasn't impressed by wealth or status. He just saw someone who needed help. That taught me more about character than 50 years of business ever did. John gave me a ride home. I gave him a job. But really, we gave each other family. And that's worth more than all the money I ever made. The story of John Mitchell and Robert Sterling became something of legend in Philadelphia business circles. The truck driver who helped a billionaire in the rain and ended up marrying his daughter, building an empire through character and kindness rather than cunning and ambition. But to the people who knew them best, to Emma and Henry, to Allison, to the employees whose lives they'd touched, the story was simpler than legend. It was about a good man making a good choice, about seeing another human being and deciding to care, about remembering that wealth and status and success mean nothing if you forget to be kind. John Mitchell stopped for a stranger in the rain, and that choice, that single, simple, kind choice, changed everything. Not because kindness is transactional or because good deeds guarantee reward, but because character attracts character, because genuine people recognize each other, because the world has enough people chasing wealth and status, but never enough people who'll stop in the rain to help someone in need. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, the person you help turns out to be exactly the person who can help you back. Not because you expected it, not because you planned it, but because kindness creates connections, and connections create possibilities, and possibilities sometimes become everything you never knew you needed. 20 years after a rainstorm in Philadelphia, John Mitchell stood in his home surrounded by family, his wife Allison, his daughter Emma, his son Henry, his father-in-law Robert, and the extended family they'd built through love and choice. And he thought about the moment he almost didn't stop, the moment he almost drove past, the moment he chose kindness over convenience. That moment had given him everything, this family, this life, this proof that doing the right thing mattered. "Get in," John had said to a stranger in the rain. "Let me take you home." And that stranger had answered, "Thank you." 2 words. Simple gratitude for simple kindness. But those 2 words had echoed forward through 20 years, creating ripples that became waves that became the life John lived now. All because he'd stopped. All because he'd cared. All because he'd remembered that every person matters, even strangers in rainstorms. The truck John drove that rainy night sat in the garage still, restored and maintained, a reminder of where they'd come from. Emma had learned to drive in that truck. Henry would too. And someday, when Emma's children asked about the old restored pickup, she'd tell them the story of their grandfather and a rainstorm and a choice that changed everything. "Your grandfather is a good man," Emma would say, not because of what he achieved or who he married, because when he saw someone who needed help, he stopped. Even when it was inconvenient, even when he was tired, even when he got nothing in return. That's the lesson. Be the person who stops. Be the person who helps. Be the person who chooses kindness. And that lesson, that simple, profound lesson about seeing people and choosing to care, would ripple forward another generation, another lifetime, another century of small choices creating big changes. Because that's how the world gets better. Not through grand gestures or massive movements, but through individual people making individual choices to help individual strangers. One rainstorm, one stranger, one choice. Get in. Let me take you home. Everything else follows from there.